there's a reason why the saying a private life is a happy life is very popular in today's culture. There's a reason why people say it as a mantra every single day. There's a reason why everyone is saying privacy is power. We have to stop using social media as an outlet to get validation and also learn what it means to build in silence and how to protect your relationships and protect yourself as we continue to talk about self-preservation. Like I was saying in my previous videos, self-preservation is simply protecting and taking care of yourself. A lot of people focus on the external, but when we talk about self-preservation, it's all about internal. It's about your habits, your mindset, and understanding human nature and human behavior. So we're going to talk about the importance of privacy and why it's important and why you need to make sure that one, you know what that looks like for yourself, and you also can see when people aren't being private for you and what that really means. So we're going to talk about this whole oversharing culture. I like to call it trauma dumping. So I have, and I still experience this to this day, I have had relationships in my life where I was the person everyone calls to just dump on. As I talk about a lot, I am the eldest daughter, I'm the oldest sibling, and so I'm seen as the one who has it all together, who can solve all the problems, who never goes through anything, which is not the case. And so I'm the person that everyone likes to call to get advice, to tell their business. Like, I'm just that person. I'm a very trustworthy person. So like I'm just that person for everybody. Not that I want to be, it's just that I am. So being that people trauma dump onto me, they're always telling me their problems, they're never asking me what are mine. I am aware of that, and so I make sure that I'm aware enough to where I am not trauma dumping on people. I am not only calling people when I need to tell them what's going on in my life. I am not always putting my problems onto other people. So for me, I feel like I've always pretty much been a private person. It's just something that's natural to me. Like, I don't see the need to tell everybody everything that's going on in my life. And I've pretty much always been that way. And so when it comes to self-preservation and understanding privacy, one, you need to make sure that you are not the person that is always calling people to tell them what's going on in your life. I'm not saying you can't vent. I'm not saying don't trust anyone. I'm saying find one, two people max to talk to about what you're going on, and don't just call them because you want to vent and you don't want to hear their opinions, because I personally struggle with that, and it's something that I've been working on. I am not the person that you can just call to vent to and I'm just going to sit there and like not say anything. You don't want me to tell you when you're wrong or when the other person's wrong. You don't want my advice. What I do is, like, when people call me, I will ask them, like, first of all, wait, do you want my advice or do you just want me to listen? Okay, I'll listen. But if it gets to the point where you're calling me every single day or more than I would like, I'm going to say, like, okay, like, I want to give you my advice because I'm seeing what's going on here. I'm seeing the issues and I'm just nipping it in the bud. I don't really have the energy or the time to continue to let people trauma dump onto me or venting to me every single day. I just genuinely don't have the time. None of us have the time if we're being intentional about our lives. I'm married, I work, and I take my job very seriously. I pour a lot into my work. So, like, I have to be very intentional with my energy. And this is why we're talking about self-preservation. I'm intentional with my energy. I do not want to be everyone's outlet. I want to encourage people to go see a therapist, start journaling, start praying, find healthy ways to cope with what you're dealing with. And instead of just talking about it, talking about what you're going to do, talking about this person that you're dealing with in your life, like, we just really don't have the time to waste on those type of things. So like I said, I'm not saying that you can't vent to people or that people can't vent to you. I'm saying that it's important that you encourage healthy boundaries and healthy habits when it comes to this whole trauma dumping idea. Oversharing is becoming an issue because everyone is seeking validation. So people are oversharing their goals, their aspirations, their dreams, oversharing about their relationships because they're trying to make it seem like everything is all good when everything is not good. And so it's just becoming the new norm, especially with social media. Like I said, everyone is Well, I don't know. Social media is kind of funny because people only share their highlights. No one is sharing, the things that they're going through in life, which I guess is a good thing. But it can just be very misleading when you're dealing with people who look on social media and think that everyone is living this perfect life. That's not the case. But that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But the bottom line is that oversharing is very detrimental to your self-preservation. One, because a lot of times you're doing it out of validation. Also, a lot of people do it because they're procrastinating. It's easier and it feels better to talk and not put any action behind what you're doing. It's easier to call somebody and vent about this boy that you've been dealing with for years, who is full of crap, who's cheating, who's X, Y, and Z. It's easier to do that than to put some action behind it and block him or move out away from him or kick him out or just stop dealing with him altogether. It's easier to do the talking and it's harder to do the doing. So a lot of people overshare because it's comfortable, it's normal, and it's just what keeps them in this comfort zone of actually not putting action behind anything. So don't be the person who's oversharing. If you want to practice self-preservation, like I said, spend more time praying, journaling, find 1, 2 people max that you trust, but don't just tell them what's going on. Be intentional about what you're telling them and why you're calling them. Let them know, I just need to get this out. Yes, I've already prayed about it. Yes, I've already vented to my partner about it, but I just really want a second opinion. I really want your insight. Say something like that. But don't just be the person who's using people to, express how you feel and also not check in on them to see how they're feeling. When it comes to oversharing and like trying to find that boundary with privacy, I think it really just depends on the person, and I think it just depends on what you're comfortable with. But me personally, I have some no's on things that I don't share. I don't share how much I make an hour. I don't share anything about my relationship. Me and my husband, we are both very private people. We don't feel the need to go and overshare. I have talked to my parents about certain things. That's about as far as it goes. They don't know a lot of specifics because it's important that you as a person figure out your own problems. I'm not saying you can't ask for help, but you need to be a solution-based person. And so my husband and I, when we have issues, we figure it out together. We figure it out because a lot of times it's usually self-development things. It's trauma, it's, bad habits. And so a lot of times it's just you needing to sit down and do some inner work. And so we are really big on self-development, doing inner work to help our relationship. A lot of times we don't need outside people to tell us what we need to do. A lot of times couples struggle because they aren't healed, they aren't doing inner work. So it's easier and it makes sense for them to just go out and talk about it on social media, talk about it with their whole contact list because they don't see that they're the problem and they aren't wise enough to see what the actual problem is in their relationship. But that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. So I don't share personal things about my relationship. I don't share how much money I make. I don't really share my religious views. I don't really share, kind of like the things that they say you shouldn't talk about at work. Those are things I pretty much keep to myself. Any trauma that I've been through, if you aren't like a close friend, my husband, or someone who I dealt with the trauma with, such as like my sister, I don't really share that. Like, you guys know that I've been through trauma. You know that, I've had issues with my parents. You don't know specific details. And that's not to say that I will never share it. It's just that I'm intentional about what I share and why and when. So you find your own boundaries of what you want to keep private. But I say keep those sacred things private. Keep those things that people can use to manipulate you private. People want to know how much money you make because they want a pocket watch. That's a huge thing. So find those things that you see trigger people, that get people to act certain ways. Figure out what those things are and keep those things private. To go along with this, it's important that you understand every goal does not need to be announced. Honestly, I feel like goals really should not be announced at all. I think that it's something that you should keep to yourself, and kind of like Instagram, let it be a highlight, I'm not saying you can't share at all. I'm just saying that I think when it comes to your goals, it's another one of those things where you feel like you're working towards it because you're telling people when you haven't even took the first step yet when it comes to that goal. Not sharing your goals is more so for your own protection and not really when it comes to other people. Yes, you will deal with people who will try to compare, who will try to outdo you, who will try to steal what you have going on. That should be the least of your worries. If people want to copy you, let them do it. But when it comes to your own like productivity and your own habit, I think it's important that you keep your goals to yourself because you really need to focus on doing and less talking. I think the whole moral of when it comes to privacy is less talking, more doing. So every goal doesn't need an announcement. Like I said, you can say like, oh, like I want to pay off debt, or oh, like I'm working on losing weight. But at the same time, you want to be careful about who you say that to, because you got people who will talk down on you, who will discourage you, which I will talk about a little bit later. You just want to be intentional about who you're saying things to, because you don't know people's intentions and you don't want them to rain on your parade. So just know that not every single goal needs an announcement. This is why it's important that you practice discernment. You know, you watch your relationships, you pay attention to how people respond to certain things that you tell them, because that will let you know if this is somebody you should be sharing private matters with. I've already kind of talked about this, but you need to protect your relationships from outside opinions. Me and my husband, we've been together for almost 9 years in July. So next month, it'll be 9 years. We've been married for over a year. And I will tell people, I think one of the top 3 reasons why we've been together is because we do not allow outside opinions to dictate our relationship. But the reason why they aren't able to is because they don't know what's going on. So, like I said earlier, we don't tell people our problems. We don't go to outside people because, to be honest, most people in our lives are not in healthy relationships. So, what do we look like getting relationship advice from people who are not married, who have not been in a long relationship, who are in toxic relationships? Doesn't make sense for us to get advice from them. So, when it comes to being private, it's also definitely about having discernment and understanding that when you tell people your problems, especially when you're dealing with your partner, when you're telling people your problems, they're not going to give you good advice. One, because they're either out to sabotage, because that is a thing, or because they just don't have the wisdom to be able to give you sound advice. You know, imagine getting advice about your marriage for someone who's never been married. Imagine, getting advice from someone who hates men as a woman. You're getting advice from a woman who hates men, who, not to say that she's like only like women, sexuality wise. I just mean that she has this thing against men because she was hurt in the past. And so she's giving you all this toxic advice that's encouraging you to maybe leave your husband when y'all issue is something that can be handled over a simple conversation. So it's important that you protect your relationships by knowing who to talk to and who not to talk to. So this is why I say find people you trust. I would say right now, if I were to need relationship advice, I would go to maybe my parents, my stepmom or my dad, or my best friend. My best friend, she's in a new relationship, but she is a very intentional person. She's she's just like me. She's super down to earth. She's very she's good with giving me advice and criticizing. She won't just let me tell her information and she just take it and be on my side. She's not a yes man. You need people around you who aren't yes men. If you want to tell people anything, talk to people who are going to be honest with you, who are going to not sabotage you. They're not going to tell you anything because they want to see your relationship fail. So this is why it's important that you practice privacy. You don't want to just tell the internet, because you're going to have all these women or men giving you these terrible advice because they're unhappy, they are depressed, they are lonely, and so they want you to feel the same way they feel. Misery loves company. So to protect your relationship from, terrible outside opinions, be private about it and be intentional about who you talk to about what's going on in your relationship. And then lastly, when it comes to, like I said, your goals, your dreams, your aspirations, it's just important that you build quietly. So like I said, I don't want to encourage you to keep everything a secret, be mysterious, all that lame stuff. I'm just saying that you need to be a doer and not a talker. Let people see what you're doing and take notes instead of you talking about it and wanting their validation. Just do the work. Not because you want them to praise you or to give you some sort of points, cool points, or validation. Do the work because you want to do the work and you need to do the work and you want to become better and you want to protect and preserve yourself. Build quietly, shut your mouth. Stay off social media blasting all of your business because you want outside opinions, because you don't want to do the inner work, because you don't want to face your problems. Social media has just been, like, I remember being in high school. And every time I would feel a way about something, I would make like a post and it would be like a quote. Or it's like I would say it, but I would say it like subtly. And like especially about like me and my partner, or like if I'm beefing with some girls, like everything would be so like indirect, right? And that was me like not being a private person. Like that was me just trying to get validation from whoever I'm trying to make mad. That was me just seeking attention. That was me being childish. And I was a kid, so rightfully so. But I learned quickly like that is so immature. You know, if you want to be a boss, if you want to have healthy relationships, just go to the person. Protect yourself from everyone wanting to know what's going on, everybody putting in their 2 cents. Protect yourself from all of that, because if you don't, what I always say, you're going to be in chaos, you're going to be unhappy, you're going to be miserable like everybody else, and it's just not a way to live life. So privacy is not about keeping people on their toes or being mysterious. It's about protecting yourself. You need to get in tune with your inner self and know what's right for you. When you're not private, like I keep saying, you are worried about what everybody else is saying. You want their validation. You want their opinion. I used to be that person. Before I would make a decision, I would call people. Should I quit my job? Should I try this? Should I do this? Should I tell Josh this? But like every decision, especially in college, I would call my stepmom every single time I needed to make a decision. And like, not to say there's something wrong with that, but in my opinion, it was. I didn't trust myself. I needed people to confirm how I was feeling. I needed validation. And I'm saying, don't be that person. Self-preservation is also about self-trust, having confidence within yourself, having confidence in yourself to make good decisions. And this ties with privacy. So if you are someone who's working on, building self-trust, building, confidence, be a more private person. Don't feel the need to tell people every single thing all the time because you want them to accept you or to validate you or make you feel like you're doing something. Right now, I can honestly say I'm at a point where I don't know where my career is going to look like in the next 5 years, but that's okay. I have an idea. I have things that I'm working on. I have things that I'm researching, but I don't need to call and tell everybody what I'm doing. Every time I say I'm going to start school, I'm like, I'm not going to tell nobody. And guess what? I tell one person, 2 people, 3 people, and guess what? Now I'm not going back to school. So it was like, what did I do all that for? To make myself feel like, okay, I'm doing something. Well, I signed up for school. Everybody knows. So yeah, I'm going back to school. Whole time, I didn't want to go back to school. I just needed to do something, say I was doing something so that I'll feel validated. You see how it's all connected? So just practice privacy. Shut your mouth. Write. Journal. Pray. Talk to God about it. Don't talk to nobody else. Talk to God about it. Find one person. Let's start with one. One person you trust. Don't trauma dump. Just reach out to them. Ask them when they're free. Hey, I want to talk to you about something. I want your opinion. Be an adult. Okay, we're focusing on being an adult. We're adults now. We're growing. We're evolving. We're in our 20s. Most of you are in your 20s, 30s, based on the data. So you're figuring out life, and this is one of the number one things that you need to do to get your life together and to preserve your energy. This whole month we're talking about self-preservation. Can't talk about protecting yourself without focusing on privacy. So I hope you guys can take something from this video. Comment on it. Let me know what you think about it. Give some more tips as to what you do to have stronger boundaries when it comes to your privacy and protecting your peace and your relationships. I will see you guys in the next video.